We had two other famous individuals that we love on the show. Milei came and he gave an awesome speech.
Yes.
A banger.
Dude.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Today, I'm here to tell you that the Western world is in danger. And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism and thereby to poverty. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points.
I love it.
Dude, so cool.
One of the things I think is interesting about that is just how unified that moment was for people across like the different factions on the right, both Republicans, libertarians, factions inside the libertarian movement that were all like, yeah,
well,
you know, at that moment.
Elon tweeted it out. I mean, getting millions of views.
Yeah.
It's an iconic moment in my opinion. I mean, it's really like a privilege that for us in the liberty movement, like we're here for this. Yeah, this is what we're here for.
Although I am seeing a certain segment of people on Twitter that are just convinced he's like a CIA plant because we just can't have any victories ever.
Yeah,
like there's just the skepticism that exists, right?
I mean, I agree with you, but I'm
seeing it all over
by
the
that.
place.
I'm so annoyed by that. Like, dude,
because even if he is like,
I had a bunch of people tweeting that
at
me. Like, I posted a clip of this, and I had people in the comments saying it was like, well, obviously he was invited because he's like in bed with them, and you're just like, oh, jeez. Like,
I think everyone listening to this show should watch and listen to this speech in its entirety for themselves, find a quiet place and really just absorb it. Because I think if you value individual liberty, if you understand the typical context that we've just gone through very thoroughly of what the WEF typically is, and then you juxtapose that with what Javier Milei was allowed to say to that audience on that stage within the context of the moment that we're in as a society, as a species on this planet, absolutely a historic moment for me. I mean, like I consider it like one of the most pivotal like speeches and political moments in my lifetime, frankly. Like really just impactful. The audience that he was able to say this to at this moment, I don't think it can be understated. Personally, I understand the criticisms of it and how this is a lot of talk, right? We'll have to see what Javier Milei's actions are.
He's already doing
over time, right? But who knows, right? One thing that I look at this critically for is that I don't like how it sort of is a backdoor way of legitimizing the activities of the WEF because they've invited a guy that I agree with to say something that I agree with. I don't want people to see this and think, oh, the WEF is actually really fair and balanced and like they have some good ideas too, right? Like really, I think what they're doing is
tip of the hat to the WEF for actually doing this, because I think you had a good post. You know, you were sharing Klaus's comments about how libertarianism is kind of the
anti-system,
the enemy.
Oh yeah.
So it's a surprise. It's a surprise that they allowed him to do this.
But why then? The skeptic in me is like, why would they allow this?
Because he's a new global leader. Yeah. Like that's their supposed mission is not supposed to be ideological. It's supposed to be about bringing people together to discuss ideas and that sort of thing.
And to kind of convert them under their wing. So like they put out, because remember in the early days of Vivek's campaign, he got hit for being considered this young global leader by the WEF. They do that to everybody. Like Ivanka Trump was on there, Tulsi Gabbard was on there, and they just put out a wide net and try to be like, hey, come to our conference and also pay a bunch of, in order to be a member, you have to pay $10,000 a year here kind of a thing. Like it's a whole thing. Like that's how Klaus expands the net. So they just try to grab Putin was on that list, right? And then when the Ukraine war started, they quietly removed him from the list.
Okay, so then let me frame this in the form of a question. Do you think Javier Milei is going to have more of an impact on the WEF or the WEF on Javier Milei?
Depends. Does he accept the prostitutes or not?
I mean,
Well, I think they probably invited him there because he's a sex guru.
Yeah, probably not.
They invited him there because they needed him to teach them his ways.
That's really
right?
what it is. Yeah.
he's very Latin American.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever do you mean?
Well, that's the thing is Javier. He's done all the homework. He's read all the books.
Yeah.
He knows what his identity is within kind of the ANCAP Rothbardian school of thought when it comes to Austrian economics. Him going to the WF is not going to be like Klaus is just like, you're one of us now. Like, no, that's not going to happen. Like he's old and he's in his ways about things, right? He's not going to just all of a sudden be like, I'm a Keynesian now. Right. He's not going to do that.
If he is who we think he is, then he's uncorruptible.
Yeah. Additionally to
he
that,
might go to the Bunga Bunga party. But.
he went there.
He's just got to see it.
His core message was that there's
It'd be rude
objective
not to.
data that suggests that the best thing we could do is a free market with individual liberty and individual rights. And then he went on to say that there's a moral structure here that is better too. That was what I loved about his speech so much.
Yes.
Unified the scientific, empirical approach with a moral argumentation. And he said both of these things together. And he said, I'm here to tell you that you're part of the problem. Freedom, damn it. And he left.
Yes.
Right. So like that, flew with their coach. He's there with his staff. Like he's there in a very different capacity. They also brought the Heritage Foundation CEO there as well, who basically tore the place apart as well. So it is, they might be them trying to repair the brand by bringing in different voices. Mm-hmm. They failed to do that on a lot of other stuff, like that science panel that I showed you. Everyone agreed on everything.
And that's my concern here.
Right?
That's my only critique really of this moment is I want to be cautious that we don't just give the WF a pass because now they invited Javier Milei or the Heritage Foundation CEO.
It's too embedded in the culture to hate the WEF. That's not going to happen.
Well,
like what we end up having right here is we showed the clip of Klaus at the beginning saying that reactionary movements destroy faith in our collective vision. And then you have later that day, Javier coming in, collectivism is what destroyed my country and I'm here to abolish it all. like it's a very...
Yeah. So if it transforms from a globalist cabal thing to more of an open platform, awesome. Like, that doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
right?
I don't see this being a thing that influences the World Economic Forum, and I don't have much fear that they're going to be corrupting Javier Milei. But I do think that this is just an amazing moment where he's speaking truth to power, and this speech to me is now like right up there with something like iPencil as like a concise, impactful thing that we're gonna, if somebody's like, hey, what's this libertarian thing or whatever, it's like, check this out. Mm-hmm. If you only have 20 minutes to dive into this, like go here first, that's what he just did. And I'm so grateful.
Likewise. And we'll make sure that the speech is in the show notes and the version that is like dubbed over with AI. So it's in English, but sort of in
you don't have
his
to deal
tone of
with
voice.
his Spanish,
Right.
like with it, and then also the
Being
English
translated.
translation. It's just straight English in kind of his voice tones and stuff. It's pretty cool.
For sure.
Wait, just from a technological thing, that's awesome.
Pretty rad.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because that was one of our main critiques of or laments, I guess, is we can't hear his speeches in English without
it's hard
the
for us
subtitle
to react to them. Yeah.
Right. So
I also, before we sign off on this topic, he mentions there's a very interesting history in Argentina where they went from a very command control economy, dictatorship, to a very free market economy, back to a very Keynesian fascist sort of economy. And for those of you out there who are into the history of this sort of thing, I would just advise you to check out Juan Bautista Alberti. He's the historical figure that in the mid 1800s helped to bring Argentina from the depths of despair to one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And it's a fascinating history. So I don't know if we got time to go into it today, but he's one of history's true unsung heroes.
So one of the other favorite members of the show that we like to check out, Zelensky was there, and I watched his speech, and it was very interesting. And I just want to note this because I do think it is a signal. Glenn Greenwald covered it too. He said it was like the whole like a delusional peace process thing. But one of the things I thought was interesting is how much Zelensky spent his time at the World Economic Forum justifying Ukraine not being able to actually push Russia out. Basically, his case was the people who gave us the weapons told us not to use them to escalate, and we couldn't therefore win. And so now we're having to pursue a peace process that is suboptimal because we didn't actually punish Russia as much as we could have. And that was his message to WAF, and everyone, and I'm like,
so he's blaming everyone who gave him money and weapons that they didn't win.
Yeah, because they came along with a disclaimer that said, "Don't escalate." Like, what would they have done? Like, what was their escalation plan? They're bombing Moscow right now, right? Like, what are we doing? What was the plan that they could have done that they didn't do?
Right.
He was very vague about that. But basically, he takes no responsibility for the failure. He takes no responsibility for anything else that's happened, and he just unwinds this crazy talk about how Russia wasn't really punished for their aggression because America failed to believe that Ukraine was better positioned to actually punish them.
I'm so curious about Zelensky because he started out as such the darling of the like Western globalist consortium, if you will, and now he's sort of like, it seems like he kind of went off the rails or maybe like got off the leash a little bit, and he's just like sort of this like baby throwing a tantrum that he didn't get what he wanted.
Yeah,
and he's railing against the people who were propping him up the whole time. Like,
I think he was a useful tool, and he's no longer useful anymore. Yeah.
Now he's just a tool.
Discard him.
Yeah,
and you do feel bad for the guy. Like he was taken advantage of by a class of people, probably on the behalf of the military-industrial complex to funnel money and weapons and all these things into.
Not new.
Yeah. And now he's still out there. I mean, understandably upset about the plight of his countrymen who they put on a bonfire and lit to secure the global rules, international order of America.
But he's not at the WEF saying like, and I didn't watch the speech, so correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe he did say this, but he's not there saying like millions of young men in Ukraine died. He's saying we didn't punish Russia hard enough. It's like he's lost in the sauce of like Putin, like destroying Putin, not about the destruction of his own country. I don't think he gives a shit about that, frankly.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I think he. I don't know about his motivation, but he definitely. You're right. I mean, there's a component of it that he is trying to rationalize the way that the international global elite think of foreign policy.
Yeah,
which is pawns on a chessboard, not that the individuals matter at all. Right? Yeah. And that's exactly how the foreign policy establishment thinks of it. I mean, they're not. They think of this in terms of degrading Russia's military power,
right?
Not in terms of the generation of people now lost,
right?
And if you see those stats, like you can see current Ukrainians by age demographic, and that 20 to 30 range has plummeted.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's an entire generation gone. Well, and it's also worth noting too is Zelensky was a main figure at last year's World Economic Forum, and he was like the star that everyone was talking about. He had the big gigantic speech and stuff, and it's just a massive tone shift. If you go and watch that versus now, it's just like.
And almost no one talked about Zelensky too. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because it was crazy to me that WF happened and I didn't see it anywhere other than Glenn Greenwald covered it. And that was it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's just the war in Ukraine has been completely usurped by what's going on in the Middle East, right? Yes, I mean, that is the new media darling, the new war du jour, and Zelensky's just yesterday's news, right?
Yeah.